Demita Beck-Taylor.
Here.
Erica Dixie.
Here.
Dale Grimes. John Harvey. Jeff McCormick. Jennifer Moody.
Here.
Emily Stutzman.
Here.
We have quorum.
Awesome. I feel like we just had quorum, so that's really, really good. Thank you, guys. So, one, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time out to be here today. I'm really excited about our agenda today, and just looking forward to having a conversation about what has been happening within waste management. We have a really important agenda to get started, and just really looking forward to this conversation today. So I would like to request a motion to approve the minutes from the April 23rd, 2024 meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll move. Oh, I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. It has been a day, y'all. I apologize. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, we will call those approved. And then we will move it over to the review of the report.
All right, so really quickly before we jump into the report that's in front of you, I just want to go over really quick about the APRs, just a reminder, that's the annual progress report and the purpose of the Solid Waste Region Board, especially for those that are watching. So the Solid Waste Management Act of 1991 established solid waste regions that requires those regions to have a board and create a 10-year solid waste management plan for that region. And then that plan is reviewed on an annual basis, and that is provided to, this is all state mandated and required by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and submitted to them on an annual basis. And so our solid waste master plan is achieving zero waste that is available on our website for those that are interested in looking at it, and of course just as a reference for everyone here. This is just going over what's in your annual report this year. We're going to go through the residential recycling and diversion, the infrastructure operations, the questionnaires, the tire report, and then a summary of the industrial, commercial, and institutional reports is really rolled up into the landfill and recycling report that you see. Okay, I'm going to give this one over to Mr. Clay Hand.
This is what we do to public, which would be what Metro picks up. And you can see the numbers are about the same as last year. The biggest difference is probably the lack of wood waste was less this year than last year. Everything else is about the same. So that probably establishes most of the difference in that.
He'll be back later. So just a brief overview of our county infrastructure. We have, Metro has 4 convenience centers. Goodlettsville has 1 convenience center within Davidson County. So in your report, you'll see the information about how many residents were served, their hours, and what materials are accepted at those locations. And then Metro has 7 drop-off locations for recycling only. The convenience centers, as a reminder, they might take more than just your traditional recyclable materials, things like mattresses, e-waste, things like that. And then for curbside services in Davidson County, of course, Metro provides in the Urban Services District trash and recycling at the curb. And then also for the General Services District of Metro is where those drop-offs really play a role. But then there's also city curbside trash and recycling in Goodlettsville, Oak Hill, and Belmead. So each year the state asks us to look at what obstacles are out there for solid waste management and achieving the goals of the state's solid waste management plan, which is to, of course, increased diversion of materials from Class 1 landfills. So you can see a lot of things marked here. Solid waste management is complicated, so everything from staff to funding to infrastructure, all of these things there are some form of obstacle here. So there's more detail in your report that you received, but just in a nutshell, we do have a lack of infrastructure and markets, so it makes it difficult to increase recycling when those are not available. We are still in the general fund, at least Metro government is as a county, which means that we're funded off of property taxes. That makes it difficult for us to have dedicated funding that can go towards investment in infrastructure and other programs as we're competing for those funds with other city agencies or city departments. Education efforts, we have definitely done a lot of education, as many of you know, to reduce contamination in our recycling, but ultimately recycling is very complicated, and a lot of misinformation from a federal level really trickles down to the point where it's still a struggle to educate residents on what they can and cannot recycle, and encourage them, help them understand and trust in that system, in that program. So that's something we're still working on every single day. And then, let's see, what do I have? Oh, yes. And then, I think I kind of covered most of those. Oh, and then that was the political support one, or lack of support. I will note that both Metro Council, I think from an elected official standpoint, we certainly have support for diversion programs and for the solid waste master plan and moving it forward. It's just more about really increasing education of what it takes to do that from a departmental standpoint. All right, so moving into our county operations. Starting off with composting, so we take biosolids, that's Metro Water Services. They create a biosolids product from the wastewater treatment process. NDOT collects yard trimmings, and then Metro Waste Services collects post-consumer food and produce, both in our curbside program as well as our drop-off program. And then Metro also provides assistance for composting workshops if you want to get started composting at home. We also provide countertop compost bins at our events, and backyard bins are available. We give some away. We also sell them at our convenience centers. For those at home, I put a QR code if you want to learn how to start composting at home. Disaster debris, we were fortunate last year. We didn't have an incident that created disaster debris that was collected by NDOT, which is just always a good thing. But there is a debris management plan that NDOT is, they're over that program. They do that collection. That report, their full report, I didn't print it out for you all, but it is in your digital version because it's longer than our report. But if you have questions about that, we can get that to NDOT. Education efforts, this is just a list of the myriad of things that we do at Metro. We have a podcast that we do. We have workshops on composting. Recycle Right is probably our heaviest education program that we do. You'll see in this chart, we've described the objective, but then also how many residents we've served and what focus area and what the target audience is. There's a little bit more detail in your reports as well. And for those at home, you can pull the report up online and take a look at that. But we do event tabling, drop-off recycling tabling, that's at our drop-off locations. Cafeteria composting as well, that's been new this year with in partnership with the Mayor's Office and Metro Nashville Public Schools. And then our food scraps pickup pilot as well has continued into this year, which is fantastic. Funding for programs, there's a breakdown of funding. One of your attachments also includes more information about Metro's revenue and the actuals for our budget for 2024. I will note that our budget information is for the fiscal year, but the report is for the calendar year. But since we do our budgeting on a fiscal year, that is how that's included in this report. And then we've also got a list of our different contracts that we work with that helps us support all of our programs. So that's everything from disposal to collection to composting, and a lot of our convenience center programs that we have, such as e-waste, recycling, and household hazardous waste collection, things like that. Oh, I forgot. There's in the corner there. Also, right now, we have, just at Waste Services, we have 120 employees that are supporting the division, but that does not include, does not include the staff that's at NDOT, the staff that's in other parts of Metro that do support Waste Services and solid waste management. There's a lot on this slide. I'm not gonna go into too terribly much detail, but just want to go over these really quick. There is more detail in your report, in your printed version. So the first question they always ask us, TDEC asks a series of questions about the annual progress. So one, is there anything from a state policy perspective that is impeding us from being able to move our plan forward and increase diversion? This one has kind of been a little bit of a broken record looking at these two particular pieces of regulation. One is what we call ban on bans, not being able to have any kind of restriction or regulation rather around any food packaging. So we couldn't ban plastic bags, for example, at the local level. Additionally, on the books at the state level is a piece of code that requires the labeling of plastics. And I think, as we know here, that little triangle symbol, when you put that on a package material, it just confuses everybody and makes them think it's recyclable. So that really kind of impedes us because people see that and think they can toss it in their bin, and then we're paying for that contamination. Next one just asks if we need help on the plan. We don't. And then just the next couple are kind of what can materials management help us with. So in number 3, we've got support for outreach efforts, in particular as we're talking about state permitting of things like landfills, getting more support there. With either some materials or staff capacity. Funding infrastructure investment kind of speaks for itself. And then the last one is really helping some of the counties outside of the larger counties with curbside recycling, because the more that we can collect from a volume standpoint regionally is going to help drive infrastructure investment in those markets. And then the next one, what can solid waste management focus on to make us successful? And we went back to those policy initiatives, those statewide policy efforts. So for example, there's an extended producer responsibility bill that's out there, but looking at how the state can help drive policy to increase diversion, increase investment in infrastructure, to really increase recycling and composting and other diversion programs. And then in particular, construction and demolition waste, and focusing on how they can support us there. Which is currently construction demolition waste, if it goes to a class 3-4 landfill, is considered diversion. So trying to figure something out there. What is needed to further our efforts in diversion? Again, infrastructure, funding, policy, and then we also noted here support for organics in schools, just because of the volume of organics that's available and how that interacts with state and federal funding. Then the next one, what steps are the county, so what are we doing to contribute to our regional plan implementation? I think the biggest and most important thing, today we have Tracy Thurman here with us. This is her first official board meeting as a new director, because we've been able to stand up a new department. That's the Metro Council has approved budget-wise as well as staff-wise to create an entire department dedicated to solid waste. That means that we can bring in the expertise, we can bring in the people really needed to drive these programs forward, and increase our diversion, because we are no longer kind of not necessarily competing, but when you have a department that have multiple goals, it can be just a little bit more difficult. So this really is a huge step for us. We're also looking at evaluating contracts and infrastructure alternatives as those contracts come up. And then, of course, our organics collection, we've been very proud to introduce some programs there and keep those going. So the department and the food scraps pickup pilot are two of the success stories that we described. And I've got just a couple quick slides. For the new department, January 2024 is when Metro Council adopted that legislation that allowed us to hire a director. And then in July 2024 is when they approved the budget for that director and additional positions for leadership. So we did a search over, I guess, summer, early fall, and then Director Thurman started in September, and then following that in the fall, we had a number of leadership positions that were hired, and we're continuing to still build more staff. We had just 4 more staff members start this week, had 1 start last week, so we're just growing and growing, which is fantastic. We are going into budget season now as well. Our memorandum of understanding to be as part of the Water Services Department is up June 30th. It sunsets June 30th, 2025. We're in 5 now. And so that means that July 1, we will be officially our own department. So just really exciting to be able to see so much happen in just such a short period of time. The food scraps pickup pilot. This is a fun chart just showing you all of the organics that we've been able to collect with a total of 3. This is to date, 3. So you just see 2024's numbers in the chart, but the total pounds is to date since the program started October 23rd, 2023, 4, yeah. So 308,000 pounds of food scraps and organic material has been collected through that program, which is really exciting, which means a little over 6 pounds, close to 7 pounds per household per week that we're able to collect. And this is only, again, 750 households. So that's a huge amount of material and a huge amount of opportunity that we have. And then when you look at the contamination rate as well as the set out rate, there's just a lot of opportunity, and it's been a very successful program. They also ask us about grants. We've been very fortunate to get, we were awarded an organics grant, which helped the food scraps pickup pilot continue through this fiscal year. We also were awarded an education and outreach grant to work on a multilingual PSA about recycling right. So we are very fortunate to have funding from TDEC and for them to have that. So this just talks about what grants we'd like to see, and what the biggest needs are for us. And these really focus for us on infrastructure and equipment and things like that. Yeah. All right, so the next few slides, I'm gonna turn it back over to Clay, who has our numbers. Do you want me to click?
The tire number was a little less this year. But it's usually around 59, 6,000 a year. So, but there's changes happening there. So, anyway, on the private side, we reached out to a few different processors this year. One was a glass processor in Old Hickory that does window glass, and another is a company, Rockwood in Lebanon, who does C&D material. So those two together added about 27,000 tons from what we did last year. Some of them, we have a little bit more metal from one company. But again, the brush, probably because of the storms, was less on that. It probably also affected NES's numbers too.
I'll just note really quickly that in your report, there are the industrial, commercial, and institutional reports. I'm included all of those in there. So those, if you want to go into detail on all these different companies that we're getting data from, that is in your printed report.
As far as the landfills go, again, the number went up quite a bit, 1.1 to 1.5. A lot of that probably C&D material, since we're losing capacity on C&D landfills locally. So a lot of the C&D waste is probably ending up in an MSW landfill now. You can see Middle Point took quite a bit more this year. By county is about half what they had last year. And Cedar Ridge and West Camden are both waste management landfills, and they switched, so what went to Cedar Ridge last year is probably going to Camden this year, but a little bit more. And a lot more went out of state this year. And again, like I was saying, that the C&D material, since the Southern Services is slowing down, that material has been going down for the last couple of years, and it's probably ended up being in an MSW landfill, which is sort of not what TDEC anticipated with diversion. So. Okay.
All right, so we'll turn it over back to Demita.
We can open it up for Q&A with the board. I can start. Can you guys talk about if there's any direct impact from the Titan Stadium with the capacity concern that you've been seeing with construction and demolition being diverted to just general waste?
Not that we've seen any. They've hauled a lot of dirt away, but not C&D, not that we know of at the moment.
I do believe that the project it's intended to be a lead project. I'm not sure what level, if it's gold or platinum, but that does include recycling and diversion. So I'm not quite sure exactly where that's going. We can certainly look into that and find out if we can get some more details. But I didn't necessarily, the last time I've asked about it, I didn't get any specifics on where they're sending the material, just that they plan to recycle it.
Okay. And then in general for the capacity concern with C&D, are there other facilities that could accept those materials that could have an impact on diversion in general?
Yeah, Waste Management, or WM, formerly known as Waste Management, they did open up their C&D recycling facility this past year. So we did see some of those mixed C&D numbers for recycling go up. There's also, and they've got a pretty big facility with a lot of mechanical equipment and technology to be able to separate that material out. We also saw, there are 2 other facilities that do some diversion of C&D material, and I see a lot more folks taking material there. That company is Triune. It's now owned by Waste Connections. There's 2 locations for that. So there's certainly some space out there, but we did not see this year a kind of broader use of those facilities. And I'm not sure if Waste Management is still only accepting materials from their projects or if they've opened that back up. I'm not quite sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. If we could go back to this new department that's been created, would you just say a little bit more about, I guess I'm not understanding, were you previously under Public Works, or what department, and maybe what stayed? Did everything move into the new department, or are some staff still under a different department?
So we were previously under Public Works.
Okay.
And then when Metro wanted to create the National Department of Waste Service, or National Department of Transportation, and so they took all of the solid waste functions out and put them under a memorandum of understanding under the Water Services Department. So that happened in July 1, 2020. We moved over to water. So we've been under those 2 different department heads, both water and Public Works. So now the goal is for us before at Public Works, we were with all of the right-of-way folks that are doing potholes and traffic lights and things like that. So what came with us when we moved to Water Services was the operations, so curbside trash and recycling pickup and any contracts associated with that, our convenience centers, our drop-off sites, We also have taken development review for solid waste that has come over, as well as the education and outreach portion, of course. Some of the things that stayed was brush collection. NDOT has the equipment that's better equipped for that, that is also used for snow removal. So that stayed with NDOT. And then also Metro beautification, which is, it's kind of split, it's waste and it's public right of way, because it's litter cleanup, as well as, you know, some recycling education in there. So that ended up staying at NDOT as well, but we still connect with them and provide resources to Metro beautification and those commission members. So then those same things will continue on with the new department. The big thing is that it's the support staff structure and the ability to expand. So we've hired a finance director or a finance manager, an HR manager, a safety coordinator, an IT person. Recently, we've hired support for those different functions, an assistant director, just all of these different positions to really provide that internal support that was previously provided by those other departments.
Thank you, very helpful. If I can ask another question, can you share kind of a status update of where the state is with their plan? I think one of the last meetings we had, we talked about they were working towards a 10-year plan that will help inform our 10-year plan.
They had a series of workshops that they talked about at our last meeting. And both myself and one of our other staff members, Sharon Smith, attended those to provide some feedback. But I'm not sure how much further past those workshops they are, but I'd be happy to reach out and find out.
Okay.
I have another one. Could we circle back to the department development, and if there's going to be a new specific focus now that you're going to be your own independent department?
So I can probably speak to that better. We just got through round one of presenting our budget today. So I think the big thing in there is in becoming an independent department, I think it's about service. It's about delivery of services and getting a standard, a higher standard of service, and that we're trying to develop a reliable, safe delivery of services in that. And right now, you know, you're every other week in recycling, and, you know, you ultimately want to get to where you're weekly doing that. That's the longer term goal. And the biggest glaring thing, I guess, is, you know, in coming into this is that the lack of infrastructure that we have ownership over, that we can control, even on our contract situation. We don't have really, you know, the control factor there. We can require them to do X, Y, and Z, but, you know, at the end of the day, there's not as great a stick as if you're doing it yourself. I will say that the shifts since we started down this path is, you know, our folks are picking up more when it comes to recycling. We combine routes. Then we were able to take over what would have formerly been the platform route. So we took on about 39,000 homes and delivering trash services to those homes. So, you know, at the end of the day, it starts with trash, and then you figure out where it goes and how you repurpose that material. So we're looking hard at those things. So that's one of the things that we took, and that was a $4 million savings between, you know, I guess picking that up in November to where we are today. And then moving down that path and creating this standalone, we're looking at those opportunities, and like in particular, we're looking at our recycling contract, and we're looking and seeing, you know, what other things that, you know, when we look at Nashville and the development that's taken place and the rapid growth, we've got an influx of people coming from everywhere. So the expectation is that we have more opportunities to recycle, more materials. Our people want to see more. So we need to be looking at, you know, how we can do that and how we can deliver that service. And then at the same time, we're going to be, you know, developing that opportunity to divert from our landfill. You know, I think we're seeing our landfill numbers go down. I know there's some discussions about the C&D, but I think, you know, you're not seeing quite the number of cranes. We've got a lot of that going on, right? But we're also looking at our plans, and I think that there's the opportunity to audit, and you do a waste audit to see what's in that waste stream. You know, are we really, what is in our waste stream right now? And I think we haven't done one of those in a while. That predates the plan that you have in front of you. So that's something that I've been in discussions about to see, you know, what are we seeing in our waste stream? I think the bright spot, I think, is the the organics pilot that we have, and so I have that in the budget as the pilot, but also then we're putting in there a study to see what we can do with organics, how we can expand that, because, there's a lot of that in our waste stream, and it's something that, not just Nashville struggles with, it's something that they struggle with across the country and what's in that waste stream. So I think there's a lot of opportunities on the forefront, and I think even our convenience centers. Are they located that, in places that make sense? Are they reaching where our growth areas are? What materials can we do there that we're taking in that can support everybody? Because, in the other outer lying areas, those convenience centers are important. They're important centers. So seeing how we can revamp that process and seeing overall how we can deliver better services. That's really what we're trying to do with this. I think what I've seen too, and probably on the front line, as far as, our folks that are delivering services, they're the forward face of government. They're touching 1 million service points every month, and so that is the face of government. So part of our role is to try to give them the resources to do their job. They have not had the technology that's normally engaged elsewhere that would say when the truck was by there, how it was, how we were delivering service, and that gets back to your efficiency. That may stop, going back to certain areas. It may help them with the turns and navigating the traffic that we're all navigating. So, right now, I had made the comment, it felt like at times we were working back in the 90s because we're paper-driven a whole lot, and helping those folks do that, I think that's pretty important. So I think we'll see a lift in that. And, at some point, we need to kind of drive toward that 4-day because that builds in that makeup day. Right now you're shifting an entire week forward that has folks that are working on a Saturday. I've got folks that may be working 7 days a week sometimes, depending on that service. And so that's tough to navigate when you have the weather and you're trying to double up and make those services up. So just having that day built in as a makeup day or a training day that also make sure that our employees are properly trained to do the work, that's pretty important. So we've been taking a look at it holistically, but in the layers, between, I guess, your middle management layers and the administration of programming, there's not a whole lot of resources there for folks. And so that's what I've noticed, because in order to have reliable services, you have to have that accountability too. And so the supervisors that we currently have, they're kind of, like I said, swimming because they got so much to do and so much on them. And so, really their role at the place that they should be at actually being able to work out in the field and not being impeded by a number of administrative functions or routing that should be occurring at various and other levels. So those are things that, as we build that in, I can see that we would be lifting that. From an infrastructure standpoint, I'd like to see us have a regional MRF because there's other communities that don't have the resources to do that, but we all build in volume to get there. So I think that's going to lift the entire region because it is a regional issue. I think it's important that we know what it is to divert from the landfill. So I think there's a number of programs and opportunities here that are on the horizon. It's just getting the resources to get it going. By July 1, we're going to be standing up, So that's, when you think about we were talking about finance things, when you're thinking about being a stand-up alone department, you've also got to figure out, the accounting pieces, and having, making sure you've got the distinctions in those roles and responsibilities to meet those standards too. So that's the back office infrastructure. But I'm excited that we have a technology person coming on board to support us that first week in April. And it's somebody I've worked with before in past life, so I think that they're familiar with the systems we're trying to build out. So I think we're going to see more traction with that, and I think that's going to be important to this area. But I'm pretty excited about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
You could
Okay, thanks. So I have a question regarding, you had mentioned the mayor has a program with MMPS. Can you speak a little more on that and just state the name of that program again? I missed that.
Yes, so the mayor's office, we've been working with their Office of Sustainability, who received some philanthropic funding to be able to do a cafeteria composting pilot program in 9 different schools. There's a couple middle schools and the rest are elementary schools. So we've been, while it's not specifically under us, we've been very supportive of their program, helped build out how they were going to implement it, as well as helping with education of the facilities folks and the cafeteria staff. It was very interesting to get to go and hang out in a cafeteria while kids throw their entire lunches away. It's pretty shocking when you see just how much food they do not eat, but what they're also required to bring. But it's been super successful. I don't have the number right on top of my head of how many pounds they've diverted. But it's a super exciting program, and the kids and the students have been super involved in doing an amazing job.
Any other questions for the board?
I did have a couple other questions, just thinking about the landfill report, part of the annual report. One of the things that I read recently, and I think more because of Middle Point and discussions that are happening in Rutherford County, I saw that one of the proposals mentioned capping the volume that would be accepted from outside counties. And that immediately caused me to think about Davidson County being probably the largest volume contributor at Middle Point. It certainly seems like we're most dependent on it as a place to take waste. What are your thoughts around that? Are you hearing that, is that a concern that it could be larger than just a Middle Point issue, and that other landfills that we're relying upon could suddenly say, sorry, Davidson County, you can only bring X tons per year, or, have we looked at that or considering that?
It is something that you look at when you're looking at your waste, plans and all that kind of stuff, when you're looking at how you divert from your landfill, where you're taking your materials and what you're doing. We've seen our numbers go down in our tonnage, what we're taking to the landfill. I will say that, our current contract is in effect until 2027, so that responsibility is there until that time period. After that time period, you would go into a competitive bid process. Now, what's typical about that is when most folks bid on those, because I've experienced that in Lexington, we owned the transfer station, but we had someone manage that. And then, of course, we had our materials that went from Lexington to Moorhead in Kentucky. So that's a pretty good haul. But most companies are pretty competitive, but what they're going to tell you is they have to tell you all the landfills that they have the availability to take your waste to. And so it becomes a destination thing. So when they're locking that in, they're guaranteeing at that price. So I know it's, that kind of thing where we've got a number of landfills. Right now, you would probably, just based on the area and what's available, there's opportunities in Western Kentucky for some of the waste that we have. And while it may seem like a long distance, in actuality, I think we're shipping ours, like 64 miles at least or better in Lexington at that time. So that's typical of what you see when you see a bid for that kind of service. So, we're going to look at, how we rewrite our bid specs, what we're looking at in that. And we're also, again, focused on those opportunities to divert from the landfill and what programs that we can do that takes tonnage away from that. And making requirements in where we can in our solid waste ordinances that impact that volume to get that effect.
The numbers that I'm seeing are saying that the tonnage that went to Middle Point increased very significantly in 2024. And so are you saying that we have the contract with Middle Point is good through 2027 and protects you from a cap on volume or maybe number of trips per day? Because it's not really the price. That's also a concern, but specifically what I saw is they are looking to make a deal with Rutherford County that would cut out other counties. I think probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 19 counties take their waste to Middle Point, and Rutherford County is trying to, I think, either shut down the landfill or preserve it for Rutherford County only waste. So that's almost 650,000 tons that were taken there this year.
So I just want to make a quick clarification. So on the landfill report, that's both, that's not just Metro residential, that's everybody in Davidson County. So when we're seeing what we're collecting from Metro government, that's where we're seeing some of those numbers go down. And from a contract standpoint, our contract is through ends in 2027. And so we are protected by that contract for what Metro collects. Now, what other folks are doing in terms of private industry, those are separate contracts, those are separate deals that they'll have to work with. And so it's the same kind of bid process that Director Thurman mentioned for all of those different people. But right now, our contract protects us until the end of that contract. And when it ends, that's when we'll go to that bid process.
Okay. So, and you believe your numbers are going down because you are diverting more or you are carrying it outside the state? Is that what I'm hearing?
Ours is having to do with our diversion efforts with recycling and repurposing material. That's where we've seen that, we're seeing that our contamination rates have gone down. They're accepting more material to process that through recycling, but our numbers are going down from our landfill tonnage for Metro.
Let me flip back to that
I
slide
just think
really
with
quick.
population growth, I don't have numbers that show me that, but I hear what you're saying.
So this is the slide that shows Metro. So I think it's an important distinction with this plan is that there's only so much that Metro is picking up that's included in this plan. So that's why there's a lot of these other programs, policies, and things that our solid waste management plan looks at to, as Tracy said, looking at those ordinances so that we can impact those private entities and what they're doing with their waste to increase diversion. It's a big reason why we've done so much work in construction and demolition and have a draft policy to move that forward to increase diversion of construction and demolition material. It's something we're still looking at. But in terms of what Metro itself collects and what programs we offer, that's where we're increasing our diversion and reducing our tonnage, at least within Metro government and the stuff that we physically touch.
Can I ask a question about funding, or do you want to stay?
No, I was trying to get to the point where there's the distinction of the tonnage from 2023 to 2024, because on the page, it looks like it goes up. So if there's a specific number just for Davidson County.
Yes, or just for Metro or Davidson County?
Metro Davidson County.
So Metro Nashville, those are the public recycling numbers. And then the overall landfill reports that you see, that's the MSW landfill, that's for everything in Davidson County, private haulers, businesses, commercial collection, industrial collection, that's everything. So not just what Metro Nashville, what we contract and what we do.
Right, so it could be Davidson County residents that do not pay, I'm going to forget what your two rates are, but don't pay the tax rate that provides Metro collection. So for instance, I grew up on the west side of Nashville. If you're in Bellevue, you're paying private haulers to pick up your garbage. So that number would be in this tonnage number, is what you're saying.
Well, the tonnage number, I think if you're referring to that one page, that's for C&D. That's not municipal solid waste.
I'm on page 104 of the report.
Okay,
Just like
gotcha.
Jen said, the class 1 landfill for municipal solid waste. BFI Middle Point.
Yes, so this is anything
All of
that went
Davidson
to all of Davidson County. Yes, everything that went to a transfer station, everything that went to a landfill, from all satellite cities, all Metro, anyone making trash in Nashville that went to an MSW landfill. That's what this number represents.
Yeah, so to clarify again, I think what you were saying is when you look at the numbers of what your department collects, the numbers going to Middle Point are going down. But we don't have that number in front of us. The larger Davidson County number, the reliance on Middle Point is growing according to these numbers. And so I wasn't raising this point yet, but where my heart is in this matter is it is going to result, I think, in a lot of sudden and significant cost increase ultimately for the residents of Davidson County if there isn't another solution or a better solution offered, because the only solutions in front of us are to haul trash further. So whether that's a private hauler or a public hauler, the cost of getting rid of our waste is going to go up. And it's in the hands of, I think, whatever they're calling themselves these days, Waste Connection, Waste Management, Republic. They are going to really dictate what that price is. They already operate generally like monopolies. And so it is good to hear from you that diversion is working. I think as much as we can help support those efforts, I want to be a part of that. But I also feel a duty to kind of stay abreast of when can we expect some solutions that might help residents not feel the impact of these longer hauling distances and the lack of new landfills or expanded landfills in Tennessee.
I was gonna say, is that a question, or are you just making a statement on that?
I'm making a
I mean, that,
statement.
again, that's part of, I think, why the council and why, again, the mayor committed to trying to do a standalone department and build that out. And right now, we're just trying to get resources to be able to address these issues and think long-term in that. So we're right now being shepherded under water services, but it is a regional issue for sure. And those are things that we are looking at when we're trying to study these and to go forward on how we create those opportunities for not just Metro in the center, but the region, and, stand up the whole area.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And one thing, I would be interested in your comments on this. It seems like haulers are having a more difficult time, because my experience as the city manager for Belmead has been that we have residents that are very interested in recycling, and we do offer that at the back door for most materials. And then we also have cardboard dumpsters where we recycle at City Hall, and they're picked up 3 times a week. They are full all the time. So people are being very diligent about recycling cardboard, but that was a specific question I wanted to ask, is what are you seeing? Because we have seen the cost, we're with the same vendor, but the cost is going up. I want to say usually twice a year, and the last 2 increases we had, I think one was 16%, followed 6 months later by another 20% increase in the collection cost. And I'm just curious, talking with our vendor, because of how much the cost has increased, we thought about changing vendors. We called 9 different companies and all said, we're not interested. And I just feel like that's a big change from a few years ago when it seemed like everyone was interested in cardboard, especially ours is, the dumpsters are locked with, where you have to break down the cardboard to fit it in. So it's a very clean product. I always had been told that that's one of the most valuable commodities, like you can almost always make your money off of it. But our vendor is saying that's not the case anymore. And that's why a lot of waste haulers are telling us they're just not interested in our product. Do you have any insight into what's changed in the cardboard market?
I haven't specifically heard anything about cardboard. Typically, you'll see, when gas prices go up, ironically, because some things and plastics are made out of oil, you'll see those prices go up when you go to market. Mm-hmm. But with all things, you benefit by volume that you're taking to market. So it may be how they're combining it and what they're doing, because you can broker a lot of material,
I do think that's always going to be a challenge for Belmead, is that we just don't have a high volume for anything that we collect. And then also part of what I was asking is when we rebid, I'm always concerned that next waste hauler is not going to be willing to do the backdoor collection of recyclables. So
I think that's where it doesn't preclude you all from drop-off locations either. I think, the drop-offs or just even some of those opportunities. That's kind of why we're kind of looking at those convenience centers and how we could benefit the area and, where it makes sense, where we can lift each other up and those kind of things and regional opportunities. Because I do think at the end of the day, that's where we're going to benefit by going to market from that. Lexington, not the cure-all or be-all, but City of Lexington had one of the few municipal recycling MRFs. And the key about that is there were affiliate relationships with all the surrounding counties and communities that brought their material there, and we all shared equally at that time in the value of what we sold. So it was just that volume. But it runs it cycles with the market, and it's usually the high side yellow sheet of the Chicago market is usually all those commodities and what their value is. So you can that's kind of transparent where you can track that to see what's going on with that too.
At the conclusion of the contract in 2027, and we go for bid, what happens if the bids are not accepted or not accepted at the prices that you're expecting? Where is that cost shifted?
You talking about in terms of just our disposal cost? I think we have to be prepared for an increase. What that looks like, I don't know. I think, we just actually went through that with the City of Lexington with their contract that they had there. That was kind of a litmus test for me because I met with my predecessor in the last couple of months, and their contract went up a little bit, but not as much as they thought it would because they had gone out under a new contract and new bid. Because at the end of the day, it's a business, for folks that are in that. And so they're going to come to it with a competitive kind of spirit, I think, when they come to us. But it's up to us to kind of evaluate whether we put green initiatives in there, we put, minority partnerships and things like that, and how we divert. Because we put some different things into the contract bidding in Lexington, so where we were getting at least a green fuels check from when the fuel from the landfill was fueling the Toyota plant there, so we were getting a portion of that. So it's just the creativity in what you do with that bid when you go out.
If the cost for some of the diversion programs, so like increasing the organics program, for example, would be the equivalent of what you could expect for an increase in fees for taking trash a little further, would there be a priority to have the diversion programs, or would there be some sort of combination of initiatives that you would put in place to help with diversion? I'm asking this because to your point about the middle point piece, they've been very vocal about the potential of stopping Davidson County specifically. So hearing that and trying to be prepared for it without necessarily having the increased dollars from further hauling or just increased dollars for having it go to another landfill, is there an opportunity to focus beforehand on creating those diversion programs and something like the organics, since it's seen so much success, and expanding that beyond a pilot phase before we get to that point? Is there any opportunity for that, or is there any discussion about that?
I think that's where we are right now. Just looking at our organics, our folks that do it love it. And you do see a bulk of material that's in the waste stream that usually is organics. I've also been in discussions with NDOT because obviously they've got the yard waste material, so those two usually make good mixing. So, that's something that they're charged with looking at on their end. So we've been in discussions even this last week about, what are our opportunities, what are the potential for that? A digester system, those kinds of things for organics. It's just looking outside the box. But, it's even how much we actually put into educating the public too, because that is so confusing when it comes to recycling. And I think Jen touched on that in her presentation, is just because it has that symbol. And it's interesting because, again, the current processor that we have, it's limited on what they're taking. That's why the contract we have, we're getting ready to go back out for bid. Right now, our existing contract says they can be the sole processor. And my thought was, well, how can we broker ourselves? Or if they're not going to take this particular material, then we can search and find those outlets. And that's what we're working on right now is, the more things that we can divert, the more education we can get out to the public to show that these are things that we can take here, even repurposing or how we buy. You see it during Super Bowl. Everybody throws out the TV, they get another TV. So, even looking at our electronics, we're trying to do like a program and develop a program that we can let 501c3s come in and shop, because there's good stuff that comes there. You know, maybe we set up somebody in a household that needs to be reset up in a household to help out in areas and like that. So there's a number of opportunities for us to repurpose things that we have even in our own household, besides organics. But I think the way things have been budgeted heretofore, there hasn't been the dollars that's been put in that public education piece per se. You know, Jen and them have relied a lot on social media and, you know, their advocacy in these things, but putting it out there and doing the pieces with that. And I know the Recycling Partnership is a national organization, but they make money available to communities, and Nashville has benefited from that before. But they've even offered that out to that recycling facility and that kind of thing. So those are all different ways that you can kind of look at and seeing how we piece that apart and, you know, divert that material from there. And we talked about making more public events. You know, I know we do HHW at a couple of our facilities, but just making that an outreach to where we say, come one, come all, bring your material, and then we get it processed. And, you know, we're looking at that opportunity. Paper shredding, you know. So those are things that are in that new budget proposal about how we can reach others with this, you know, kind of thing, and beef up where we've got education that's showing folks how we can do this.
I think one of the obstacles that, to meeting the goals that we haven't talked about is that we are a regional solid waste board made up of one county, and one county that is growing and without a lot of available land for a landfill. And so I think an option on the table, if we are considering the scenario that Middle Point would no longer be available, I think it opens a door, a business opportunity for some other county that does have excess land. But the challenge is back to, and you have done a good job of trying to educate some of us at past meetings about the legislative hurdles in the way, and how local control is a very good thing most of the time. But there's a thing in government called NIMBYism. Nobody right? Not in my backyard. No one wants a landfill in their community. So I do think that the obstacle and also the opportunity is the same, in that if Davidson County and our board could look beyond our single county region and find a partner that sees the business opportunity in accepting waste from other counties, it's a significant, profitable business. And I do think it really is for a rural county, or a county that's willing to consider maybe they have excess land available for this. We should be looking to establish those partnerships. So I don't know how we phrase that as an additional obstacle, but I do think it is one. There's too many regional boards that are only made up of one county that are not truly regional, right? But we, like you said about Lexington and the MRFs, it's a perfect example of how when you truly work regionally, you can solve problems. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the state, there might be a way to word this where if we could find a way that they could support us through grants or other avenues, we need to maybe spend some time thinking about how to word that, or what we would ask, what would our ask be to better support us in this effort. I also wanted to ask, it's related, on the funding. There was a list of your major funding sources, and one of them said surcharge. Will you tell me what is, and it was about $5 million. What was that?
The surcharge is, so Davidson County, any MSW, municipal solid waste, that is generated in Davidson County, when it goes to its destination, transfer station or landfill, we get $6 a ton from that waste going to those landfills. And then for construction and demolition waste, $1 of every cubic yard that goes to those landfills comes back to Metro as funding.
And when you were created as a new department, did you lose any revenue sources, or do you feel like you have sufficient funds, like, to support the additional? I know you said there's a lot of administrative staff that are newly hired. Did they create your budget in such a way that you have that funding?
A lot of it is really creating the efficiencies in the operation that wasn't exactly there. So by combining routes, we were able to cover more territory. When just by taking the existing staff, we picked up 39,000 households, and we could service those, and we saved $4 million by doing it ourselves versus contracting. So we've seen that kind of synergy that's taken place. So, it's just trying to streamline our processes. And where maybe that it was looked at different, and you kind of take a different look at it. If you've had the waste industry background, there's opportunities in that operation. Right. So it hasn't been significant on that end. So we're getting creative with that. And there are a number of resources even within government, just like on the IT standpoint, having somebody to build what you've got. But, our government has a great group of IT professionals across government, and they come together to try to solve problems with those things. And we also work with some of the universities on that. So that's the great thing about Nashville is everybody's kind of trying to find solutions for these things, and we've got a lot of people coming to the table. And, and I'm seeing it like even from private sector folks trying to think outside the box. Do we barge? Do we rail? There's all kinds of infrastructure sitting here that might take a vehicle off the road. There might be other opportunities that might save us, to your point, to get it to another county. So I think there's a lot of people looking at that big picture right now, and I think it's a period of innovation, I think, that's going on. I think, we're having one level of discussion with that, but I think it's happening throughout the community, because I think out of being put up against those kind of obstacles, I think that's where the innovation's coming from. So
I would want to caution us about thinking about taking trash other places without truly putting forth the effort to have diversion programs for within the community that are open to the community beyond a pilot phase. I understand that we have trash that needs to go somewhere, but just like we don't want it here, I'm assuming some other counties wouldn't want it there. So before we get to that point, I would really caution us about going down that route without truly investigating all of the opportunities and avenues that we have here.
Going back to the local obstacles, I was just wondering, is there an update on House Bill 1021, just regarding the single-use items that are just thrown away, the plastics, the straws, that was apparently an obstacle for the, in 2023, maybe, 2023, 2024.
Was the question just to go over what that obstacle, more in
I was just
detail?
wondering, is there any update on that
Oh,
bill,
update.
that House Bill 1021?
No, it's been on the books. That's what, it's been passed and it's been on the books for quite some time. And I have not seen any, movement towards it changing in any way. I know that there were in past years some looking at having a committee to look at, how they could make some litter policies or regional or statewide policy around some of these things, but none of those have come to fruition, and I'm not familiar with anything currently that's happening with that. It's just on the books.
Okay. So this is just a huge issue that was, I guess, an obstacle for the diversion, all this.
Yes, so it basically limits us in terms of a local government being able to regulate things. So like the single-use plastic bags. Now, it might not be the biggest part of our waste stream, but it's still a significant, each piece of this puzzle is important, and it's just one more thing that prevents us from being able to accomplish what TDEC has asked us to do. But I will note that there's the extended producer responsibility bill. That is, while it's not exactly specifically related to that, that is a statewide effort that is being looked at that could impact funding for infrastructure and recycling of some of those single-use products. But in general, any packaging that these manufacturers are creating interstate. So that could address it a little bit, which is why we also included in the APR questionnaire, really having the state support some of those statewide policies, because we do need some of that statewide support if we're not locally able to do something.
So if we can't get them to support, do we have anyone, a lobbyist, someone up there advocating for those needs, a lobbyist?
I do know that Senator Heidi Campbell had some bills this session. I don't know the status of those bills, but I know she was looking at plastics specifically.
Yes, that's that extended producer responsibility bill.
Okay,
So that's still in process. I'm not 100% sure where it's at, if it's being looked at a committee. I can get those details and send that out to exactly where it's at via email. But in terms of a lobbyist, I'm turning it to Tara.
Yeah, I mean, the government has, and Metro has lobbyists, and so each department, when bills come out, we sort of look at those and we speak to them, so we do have lobbyists in place. It's really for each department to sort of brainstorm with the administration and figure out what sort of priority to take up there, and then just, see where it goes from there.
Any other questions from the board?
I have one. I'm glad you're here, and I'm thankful that this, this discussion of the new department is really exciting and offers a lot of opportunities. As far as dedicated funding, what are our options as a city to develop dedicated funding to get out from this general fund and move into a fee-for-service or some other model?
I think there's the opportunity to do an enterprise fund. I mean, usually when there's a dedicated infrastructure, that's typically what you see.
Okay.
It can be a portion of something that you're, I guess, doing a monthly use fee, that kind of thing that you've got, that you've set up as a refuse fee. Lexington had a refuse fee on the water bill. There was a portion of property tax. It wasn't quite as significant, but there is some truth to that, because the thing is like when a government goes through, hard times, the downturn in the economy, things like that, the last thing you want to do is cut an essential service. And so, trash is like trash delivery, recycling, and recycling is part of that component. People expect both, that's part of what that scenario is now. And so, the last thing you want to do is tell them you can't have the service, so that kind of insulates it a little bit better from those cuts. But we're not there yet. I think that's a long-term kind of thing. I know some other communities have looked at it as pay-as-you-throw, and, there's communities that look at reducing the trash can size, because then you increase what they're recycling, that kind of dictates behavior. So there's a number of scenarios that you can kind of go through on that. Again, as far as changing behavior and changing waste cost, because that would change up the cost too when it gets to container cost. But yeah.
I would just like to say thank you. Again, very good report, very informative. Appreciate all the work that you do. And like Emily said, I think it's very exciting. I did not realize you were not already your own department, so that is my fault. I can only imagine that is a challenge. It sounds, for those departments that serve such different customers and such different needs, you're right. I think it is a huge benefit to have a very qualified director that understands your specific operational needs, service needs, and your customers' needs. So thank you for what you do. We appreciate you.
All right, if there are no other questions, we'd like to turn it over to public comment. We would like for folks to please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, so I've got one signed up for public comment. If anybody else is interested, we'll start with what's on the sign-in sheet, and then I'll ask for anyone else. So first we have John Vanderhurst. And also Abby's going to turn on your microphone. And let me know when you're ready, and I will start your timer.
One person, 3 minutes. God. To give you an idea of how much that food thing does, that amount of tonnage over the entire program would fill about 13 typical trash trucks. That's all. That's very little. So don't be deceived by the staff people. That is, we're doing very little in terms of recycling. I haven't been able to complete RAM's website yet, but if you go to ramtn.org, that's Recycling Advocates of Middle Tennessee. One thing we do have that I think would be of benefit to the board members here is a very simple, basic explanation of what you need to do to get to zero waste. It's pretty brief, so it's a pretty fast read, and so I'd encourage the board members to take a look at that. The interest right now is pretty low on this issue, and the interest in business is pretty confusing with the changing landscape federally. So a lot of things are going to be shaking out. I will say to one of your comments there, the waste industry is right now very, very profitable. They are rolling in money, but what they do is they spend money on the politicians, so they keep their business doing really well. That's not serving our economy well. We've looked at the economics. What you want to do is recover everything in the waste. And right now, Metro doesn't seem interested. Metro seems to think they can base their economy on entertainment and not look after the interests of the particularly the lower income people, and they just think those people can just be homeless and they can push them around, and that's how they deal with them. It's not very sophisticated government here, and I think it'll take an economic slowdown for the public to wake up a little bit more that we need to have some business development, but right now that interest isn't right there. Plus I think the public has got their brains pickled on TikTok right now, so they're just not really too active on too many issues at all. And so that's a dilemma for us where we're trying to marshal citizen interest to basically back good things in government. So at least we got Tracy's in place now, and I've looked at what she's done up in Lexington, and so she has some knowledge of the issue. However, we're interested in going beyond what they were doing, and we can because we have larger scale here. And if we get our act together in terms of processing facilities in this county, the surrounding counties will be sending material in to us. The surrounding counties are having similar problems politically to Davidson County. They don't have their act together, and so they're not really that advanced. And so if we get our act together here, we'll become like Lexington ended up with when they have a MRF that the government owned. They could work these deals, and that's key here. When we have a landfill company that's running our little Stone Age MRF out there, very crude, and it's landfill oriented because that's where they make their biggest margin. So we got to get away from that if we're interested in meeting the needs of the public, which is what I represent. I just say biggest thing, go to ramtn.org. I'll give you some cards for Urban Cruise Ship. I'm managing 3 nonprofits right now, and Urban Footnotes, they're all linked. So you can go to one of them and find the other. The Urban Footnotes has taken my time this last year, which is really big. I'm trying to get rid of cars, basically, which is a big challenge. And it's a project nobody's done before, so I specialize in those, and that's taken my time. So I have not gotten back to RAM. When you see RAM's website,
we're at time, if you want to wrap it up.
It's about half done, roughly. So it's got some good stuff on it, but the rest is yet to be completed. And I tend to get back on that as soon as we get our Urban Footnotes project out the door. So, and then ultimately I'll be able to reorganize, get some people, and we'll conduct education sessions again. Like we did in the past, but it's a new board. It's not very many people on this board. We had 13 people on this board as of the 1990s when we had the maximum amount of material recovery that we've ever had.
Mr. Vanderhurst,
Pardon me?
can you wrap it up? We're at time.
Pardon me?
Do you mind finishing your statement? We're at time.
Okay, because you don't want to listen to the citizens. Okay, I get it. I will sit down and let you continue to just blah, 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 and not get anywhere, continue to get not anywhere. And, okay, I get it. I get it. You are not interested in citizens. This is why citizens don't vote.
Please do not be rude. Could you wrap up your comments, please?
You are rude to the citizens because you are not fixing the problem that citizens have asked you to fix. And how rude is that? And that's why the citizens don't vote, because they've given up on their government, because the government is a piece of crap. And they put up boards
John,
with
we
nobody
appreciate your
on it that
comments,
knows anything.
and thank you for being here. We have hit our 3 minutes times and gone over, so we're going to have to go on to our next public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? Okay, I will turn it back to Demita for the vote.
Thank you, guys. I would like to request a motion to approve the 2023 annual report and solid waste management plan. Can I have a second? A second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining?
Hold on, did you say 2023 or 2024 report?
Oh, I'm sorry, 24. It's 23 on the sheet. Apologies.
My bad.
Let's do this again. I would like to request a motion to approve the 2024 annual report and solid waste management plan. Could I have a second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's approved. Jen, anything else before adjournment?
Nope.
Okay, I would like to request a motion to adjourn. Have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.